Hello, welcome back. This is part two of the Paleolithic to Neolithic lecture for art appreciation, section two. One thing I wanted to cover before we went on to the next slides was something I wanted to say about this slide right here, which is that's from Chauvet, and it's a pretty famous image from Chauvet. It's the famous handprint. There's actually a wall in Chauvet which is covered with handprints, but this particular handprint is all by itself. And a lot of people have noted that this is, in fact, the very first case of a work of art that we can know was made by a particular person. We don't know who the person was, but because that hand seemed to have a particular disfigurement, it seems like one of the fingers was broken, it is a mark of being made by a distinct particular individual. Whereas, most of the art we will see until we get to much later periods is anonymous. And so just wanted to mention that. Okay, on to the next set of images. So one of the things I wanted to say also about, hello, it went back. Wanted to say about the caves paintings is that there are three main sites that we're going to talk about. We already just saw images for Chauvet and for the cave paintings at Lascaux. And there's also, both Chauvet and Lascaux are located in France. Chauvet is the most recently discovered. And the third one that I will just briefly mention is Altamira, which was the very first one discovered, and that's in northern part of Spain. And there are other cave sites, but none as well preserved, and none with cave paintings as well preserved. Besides the paintings, the main artwork or main examples of Paleolithic culture that we have are totem figures. And we describe them, I talk about them as totem figures because of a couple of reasons. One, I mean, they're small figurines, they're small, they were probably meant to be carried by a particular person. Many of them have evidence that they were worn like a pendant on a necklace. Some of them have holes drilled in them to be hung on a necklace. And that they seem to have religious significance, and that and so that people wore them for the remembering of some religious significance. Many of these are described as Venus figurines, and we'll talk about one of the most famous ones just shortly. Right now we're looking at the Venus of Hohlefels, which is one of the oldest ones. And the term Venus figurines, basically, it just means that they are considered fertility figurines. They are representations of a kind of a Earth Mother Goddess, where the fertility of the figure, the fertility of this woman, is connected with the fertility of the Earth. And that's just because the archaeologists who first discovered these figures made that connection between that kind of fertility cult and the fertility cult of the Greeks and Romans. But we definitely are certain they were not actually called Venus figurines by the people who made them. That's a 20th century distinction. So the most famous one is the Venus of Willendorf, this one right here, and this figure kind of shows a lot of the main characteristics of all the figurines. One is that it is very reductive, very simplified, and that it's kind of abstract. Many of the characteristics of the figure are almost lost, like the arms are barely visible, right? There's no feet. But then other characteristics, also we can't see the head, whether that's because she doesn't really have a face, or whether because the hair is covering her face is not entirely clear. But then other features are exaggerated. All the sexual characteristics are overly exaggerated for the purposes probably of representing fertility. And you can see that in other Venus figures, such as the Venus of Dolny Vistanich here and this one. One of the things you might kind of notice is that as they're getting more and more recent, they become more simplified and more reductive, more abstract. This particular one, the Venus of Dolny Vistanich, is especially interesting because it's the oldest example of fired ceramics that we have. Whether this culture purposely fired ceramics is not completely clear. It could have been a situation where they made ceramic figurines unfired, and that this particular figurine just accidentally got fired hot enough so that it is a fired piece of ceramics now. But Paleolithic people also made other kinds of totem figures, many of them animal figures, such as this bison. A lot of the same kinds of animals that they did drawings of on their caves, such as lions, horses, bison, and other kind of cow-like animals were common features. We also have evidence of other kinds of necklaces. And as we're looking at these, and we see hints, just like with the bison before, we see hints of what we're going to see in terms of Paleolithic culture. We haven't yet talked about the Paleolithic change, or what used to be called the Paleolithic Revolution. But each of these, or not the Neolithic Revolution, each of these Paleolithic forms, right, this Venus here, and this figure where she's kind of like a Venus figure, and she's holding a horn, and it's in kind of a crescent shape, so like the cow horn as a moon crescent, also a very kind of, we see that even more in Neolithic art. And then this particular figure, a lion-headed human figurine, also we'll see echoes of that in Neolithic art, and also in art of ancient civilizations like the ancient Egyptians and ancient Mesopotamians. Okay, so this is end of part 2. On to part 3.